I'm going to sing this one as we prepare for Charlie's message, and it's called Still Water, and that's one of mine. Here we go. Trusting in the wisdom of the still water, trusting in the wisdom of the still water running deep. Still water, running deep, deep in me. Fill my vessel, flood my soul, infinite wisdom, pure and whole. Still water running deep, trusting in the flow of the still water, trusting in the flow of the still water running deep. Still water, running deep, deep in me. Fill my vessel, flood my soul, infinite wisdom, pure and whole. Still water running deep, living from the center of the still water, loving from the center of the still water running deep. Still water, running deep, deep in me. Fill my vessel, flood my soul, infinite wisdom, pure and whole. Still water running deep, dancing in the living, breathing. Still water, dancing in the living, breathing. Still water running deep. Still water, running deep, deep in me. Fill my vessel, flood my soul, infinite wisdom, pure and whole. Still water running deep, still water running deep. Still water, running deep, deep in me. Fill my vessel, flood my soul, infinite wisdom, pure and whole. Still water running deep, still water running deep, still water running deep.
Thank you, Deidrey. You have a way of always getting me in the right kind of mood here. I have a love-hate relationship with the Bible. I love it because the stories are full of adventure. And I hate it because many of the stories are unbelievable. Who, for example, can believe that Noah was 500 years old before he became a father for the first time? Or that Noah lived for 960 years? Do you not also question whether a man who's never built anything could build a seagoing ark more than half the size of a modern cruise ship? Of course, he had several centuries to learn and master the trade, but I still don't believe it. Then consider the flood. It rained for 40 days and 40 nights. That's hard enough to believe. But think about the volume of the floodwaters. Popular belief is that Noah's Ark came to rest on the summit of Mount Ararat. Now, Mount Ararat tops out at 16,854 feet. The flood had to raise the sea level almost 17,000 feet. Where could that extra water run off? It couldn't. And it would have taken more than a millennium just to evaporate. Now, these are just a few of the storylines that make a literal interpretation of the Bible untenable. And that's probably why many archaeological expeditions have looked for and failed to find remains of Noah's Ark. I just don't think it was there. But there must be some historical basis for the story. Now, maybe the original details were not quite so outlandish. You know, storytellers pass the story on across many generations, and they were no doubt tempted to embellish the facts to make them more heroic. So the end result is myth rather than history. Now, the book of Genesis is not the only ancient text to tell of a great flood. The Epic of Gilgamesh was found on the cuneiform tablets in the ruins of the library at Nineveh, and it also describes a great flood. The Epic of Gilgamesh predates and may have inspired the writing of Genesis. And it also describes a man called Upnapishtim, who built a great ship according to instruction given by the god Ea. This makes it more likely that there was a great flood that ended life as it was known in the prehistoric era. A British archaeologist, Sir Leonard Woolley, set out to find evidence of that flood. He conducted digs across widespread parts of Mesopotamia. Everywhere he looked, he found the same evidence. He found flood stratum at the same levels in all his pits. Above the flood stratum, he found relics of civilized peoples. Below the flood stratum, he found artifacts left by Stone Age peoples. Other scientists then joined the investigation, and they found that the flood covered almost all of what we today call Mesopotamia, an area 400 miles long and 10 miles wide, or 40,000 square miles. That is a vast area.
Your browser is loading slowly.
But it is not the whole Earth.
Click to start immediately. Your browser is loading slowly because you don't have this application.
I'm trying to hear it, but I can't quite pick it up. Anyway, sometime around 4000 BCE, the people who lived there experienced a catastrophic flood that ended life as they knew it. Now, all myths, whether Babylonian, Scandinavian, Greek, or biblical, have one thing in common. Their purpose is to convey some universal moral or spiritual truth. And it doesn't really matter what the facts are. In Unity, we accept the story as allegory. It is, therefore, the spiritual message we seek to understand. And that's the way in which we should interpret these scriptures. Now, the story of Noah continues the theme begun in the creation narrative. God determined that all he had created was very good, and that included the human beings. Then God laid down some laws, some rules for Adam and Eve to live by. And I'm sure you remember the story. Adam and Eve disobeyed God by tasting the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. As a result, God banished them from the Garden of Eden. That begins the theme that runs through the entire Old Testament. It's repeated again and again. Walk with God, and everything will be fine. Disobey God, and life gets difficult. We know all about this, don't we? You don't have to confess, but the rest of us all know. Been there, done that. My ego wouldn't let me buy the t-shirt. Now Cain kept up his family's tradition. God observed that Cain's consciousness was in the material rather than the spiritual realm. Cain chose not to walk with God, so he and his descendants were further banished. Now God's hopes now rested with the next son of Adam and Eve. And it started out well with Seth and his descendants, but the good times didn't last. By the time the family lineage got down to Noah, the situation had seriously gone downhill. You're familiar with the Nephilim, right?
No.
Y'all know the Nephilim?
No.
They were children begat by the daughters of humans and, get this, divine beings. Now, I always thought that the only divine being was God. You see, I was taught that there is only one presence and one power. Now, I believe that, but the one God idea wasn't introduced until the book of Exodus. Besides, when all is said and done, we teach that all of us are created in the image of God. We're all divine beings. Where does that leave the Nephilim? Well, according to the footnotes in my Oxford Annotated Bible, the birth of the Nephilim is related to show the increase of violence, in this case, through the breaching of the boundaries between heaven and earth. In other words, mankind was still curious to taste the fruit of the tree of knowledge. So what makes the boundary between earth and heaven such a big deal? Well, it's all about power. These stories were written by writers representing the priestly class, and the priests didn't want to share the power they have over the common people. God's will was what the priests said it was. The people didn't need to know. With the priests making the rules, the people knowing God was prohibited. But the writers did want to convey universal spiritual messages. We can tell that because they did not give their early characters Hebrew names. The word Noah, for example, means rest, calm, or peace. And it's notable that Noah, among all the characters in the story, was the only one who found favor with God. So we might infer that the writers intended for us to get the message that rest, calmness, and peacefulness finds favor with God. Will Durant, in his massive series, The Story of Civilization, supports this idea. Referring to the legends of the flood, for some reason I'm having trouble getting the words out today. Referring to the legends of the flood, he wrote, usually these legends were the popular vehicle or allegory of a philosophic judgment or a moral attitude summarizing long racial experience. That sex and knowledge bring more grief than joy, and that human life is periodically threatened by floods. But we can see the influence of the priestly writers. We can also understand the influence of floods on the writers. And we remember that it was the great rivers that made human settlements possible. They were built in river valleys that were subject to frequent flooding. We might question the writer's assertion that the flood was God's punishment for mankind's sin. But Durant went on to write, to ask whether these stories are true or false, whether they really happened would be to put a trivial and superficial question on their substance. Of course, it's not the tales that they tell, but the judgments they convey. That's why in Unity we interpret the Bible metaphysically. So let's take a look at the rest of the flood story, literally and metaphysically. In Genesis 6:14 through 16, God said to Noah, "Make yourself an ark of cypress wood. Make rooms in the ark and cover it inside and out with pitch. This is how you are to make it. The length of the ark, 300 cubits, its width 50 cubits, and its height 30 cubits. Make a roof for the ark, and finish it to a cubit above, and put a door of the ark in its side. Make it with lower, second, and third decks." Now God had to be specific in his instructions because Noah had never built an ark. And he probably had to ask, what is an ark? What's a flood? It's been said that it took Noah 150 years to complete the task. But trusting in God, Noah was able to get the job done. Just think about the faith that must have required. The ark was immense. It contained about 100,000 square feet of floor space. If we keep to a literal interpretation, that ark still could not have housed 2 of every species of living things known to us. We can excuse the writers, however, because they didn't know about as many species as we now know. The only refuge from the flood is God's ark. Metaphysically, the ark represents a saving state of consciousness. If you understood that clearly, you're smarter than I am. I still have to keep looking it up. But Elizabeth Sand Turner explains it better in her book, Let There Be Light. She wrote, "This consciousness is built when we rest in God and seek to do His will." Let me say that again. We rest in God and seek to do His will. In other words, Noah rests, obeys God, builds an ark, takes refuge in the ark, and survives the flood. The lesson of the ark, therefore, is, regardless of the destructive conditions around us, if we are in tune with the Spirit of truth indwelling, we shall be saved from the devastation that overwhelms those in negative states of mind. If we are in tune with Spirit, we can enter into the ark and be saved. If, however, we are mired in negative states of mind, we can't come in. It's up to us to build our own arks. We have to build our own realization of the presence of God. Then, when bad conditions appear, we don't have to be afraid. If calm, at rest, and peaceful, if we have the consciousness of Noah, we can go into the ark and there we will be saved. Remember, though, that building the ark does not mean you'll not face further challenges. As Yogi Berra famously said, it ain't over till it's over. And as Genesis describes it, the flood continued 40 days on the earth, and the waters increased and bore up the ark, and it rose high above the earth. There is that familiar story, that familiar number 40 again. Did it rain for 40 days on the earth? It might have, but I doubt it. In the numerology of metaphysics, the number 40 represents the idea of as long as it takes. In other words, the writer is telling us that the rain lasted for as long as it took to satisfy divine order. And because divine order is at work, we must stay in the ark we've created until it's safe. After the ark came to rest, wherever that was, Noah sent out a dove to see if it was safe to leave the ark. On the 3rd attempt, the dove did not return, and Noah concluded that it was safe. Can you imagine the clamoring of the passengers begging Noah to let them go? After 40 days of rain and the ensuing flood, I can imagine how stir-crazy I might have been. Let me out of here. This place stinks. Still, when we face challenges like this, we need to remember that God has a plan. We need to be patient. We need to stay focused on the presence of God until the plan comes to fruition. Then it will be safe to come out of the ark. Now take a deep breath. We're out of the ark, but the story still ain't over. Let's go on. This is Genesis chapter 8, verses 20 and 21. Then Noah built an altar to the Lord, and took of every clean animal, of every clean bird, and offered burnt offerings on the altar. Then the Lord smelled the pleasing odor. The Lord said in his heart, I will never curse the ground because of humankind, for the inclination of the human heart is evil from youth, nor will I again destroy every living creature as I have done. Now, I love this passage, and I hate this passage. On the one hand, it describes a God I believe in. This God is willing to make allowances for our humanness. On the other hand, he complains that we are evil at heart. Now, I don't know about you, but my God gives no power to evil. There's only one presence and one power, God the good. But there I go getting literal again. Let's look at the metaphysical. According to the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary, an altar represents the place in our consciousness where we are willing to give up our lower states of consciousness for the higher. So the altar was Noah's entering into an agreement with God to give up his sense consciousness in order to rise to a spiritual plane. It's not really about Noah. There is no lesson if we fail to realize that the writer is pointing the way for us, for you and for me. Will we give less attention to our material values, our animal instincts, and more for the divine? Now, Genesis, as we've already seen, is a book of firsts. Noah was the first man, Eve the first woman. Cain was the first farmer, Abel the first herder. Cain was also the first murderer and the first builder of a city. Cain's descendants were the first to play music and to work with metals. Besides being the first boat builder, Noah was the first to plant a vineyard. Now you can see where this one's going. I find this to be a rather odd postscript to the story of Noah. One thing leads to another, and Noah became the first human being to get drunk. Now here's the account as related in Genesis. Noah, a man of the soil, was the first to plant a vineyard. He drank some of the wine and became drunk, and he lay uncovered in his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his two brothers outside. Then Shem and Japheth took a garment, laid it on both their shoulders, walked backward, and covered the nakedness of their father. Their faces were turned away, and they did not see their father's nakedness. When Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his youngest son had done to him, he said, "Cursed be Canaan, lowest of the slaves shall he be to his brothers." He also said, "Blessed by the Lord my God be Shem, and let Canaan be his slave. May God make space for Japheth, and let him live in the tents of Shem, and let Canaan be his slave." The notes in my Oxford Bible suggest there is some confusion as to whether Noah's youngest son was Ham or Canaan. Who knows? Once again, however, we found the first. A religious hierarchy has been established. Shem has the first rank, Japheth the second. And Noah has presumed to speak for God by putting a curse on Canaan. And this presumption of religious hierarchies has persisted to the present day. So the priestly writers are at it again. They were probably motivated by other issues as well. Later, the Israelites, led by Joshua, took the land of Canaan by conquest. Noah's curse of Canaan was the precursor to God's covenant with Abraham that to promise the land of Canaan to the descendants of Abraham. It was preordained that Israel would subjugate Canaan. Do you wonder what impact this will have on peace negotiations in that land today? Noah's curse has another modern consequence that strikes much closer to where we live. We have recently honored Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and February was Black History Month. It has been assumed that Africans are descendants of Noah's son Ham. Slave owners and other pro-slavers have cited Noah's curse as justification for the enslavement of African peoples. The Bible, according to one's interpretation, is used to justify any, even immoral, points of view. Once again, we cannot put this story aside without another look at the metaphysical implications. Charles Fillmore, in his book Mysteries of Genesis, tells us that of Noah's 3 sons, Shem represents the spiritual nature of each of us. Japheth, our intellectual nature. And Ham, our physical or material nature. Noah's curse, therefore, commands us to allow our spiritual nature to dominate the physical. Our spiritual nature should protect the intellectual, and both should dominate the physical. Now, are we talking about you and about me? Reverend Dr. Margaret Stewart says yes. Now, she's a retired minister for the Center of Spiritual Living in Oakland, California. In other words, Science of Mind. And she wrote in this morning's daily guide in Science of Mind magazine the following. Unless we enjoy the adrenaline rush that comes with discord and clamor, we eagerly seek peace. It is through the harmonious mind that we can rest ourselves and begin to think clearly again. Peace aids in healing, since it is the peaceful mind that is receptive to renewal of our natural patterns of wholeness and restoration. She then affirms, I am the place where God stands forth in the world as me. I am aware of the peace of God that lives within me, and I eagerly let me be its grateful recipient. So once again, the book of Genesis, looked at metaphysically, describes in a general way the spiritual journey that each of us is on. God has loved us by creating us to be spiritual beings, completing us by providing us with intellect and physical being. We love God best by allowing our spiritual nature to direct our whole being. The lesson for me, God loves you, and now that I am spiritually directed, I love you too.
Okay, here we go. Let us prepare for meditation with Charlie. I'm so grateful for you. In the silence, there is a sacred place, a secret healing place. Love is there. In the silence, where every color blends and every rainbow ends, good is there. In the light, now you find that you know peace of mind. In the silence, your path is paved in gold, and all your dreams unfold. Love is there. Peace is there. Truth is there. And God is there.
As we prepare for meditation, I share these words from the Apostle Paul in his letter to the Philippians. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say, rejoice. Let your gentleness be known to everyone. The Lord is near. Do not worry about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. And so I invite you now to find a comfortable position in your seat. Feel your body relax. Allow your breathing to become regular and easy. Slow the busy stream of thoughts and open your mind and heart to the divine presence within you. The divine presence has given you the metaphysical characteristics of Noah and his sons. Call upon the Noah within you to rest, to calm the busy thoughts, and to become peaceful. Let go of the material thoughts of the Ham within you. Allow the intellect of Japheth to guide you to the spirituality of Shem. We are not God, but we can become God-like in our use of what is given. The ark of God is our refuge from the trials and tribulations of our error thoughts. There is only God within and all around me. My heart's wisdom hears the words, I am with you always, in the silence. Refreshed and renewed, I return to the activities of my day. My soul is at peace and my mind is clear. Inner harmony is restored. And so it is, and so we let it be. Amen.
Let us sing in the silence again. In the silence, there is a sacred place, a secret meeting place. Love is there. In the silence, where every color blends and every rainbow ends, good is there. In the light, now you find unfold. Love is there. Peace is there. Truth is there. God is there. And let us sing this one. God is so good. And I know that we all know this one, so let us sing it together. God is so good. It's so good to me. Here we go. God is so good. Sing it with me. God is so good. God is so good. Again. God is so good. It's so good to me. God is my source. God is my source. God is so good, pardon me. God is so good. It's so good to me. God is so good. Let's just sing that. God is so good. God is so good. It's so good to me. It's so